Welcome back, everyone, to Issues of Faith. We are talking about ministry development in the digital age. We have with us Reverend Ryan Dunn, Minister of Online Engagement at the United Methodist Communications for all of United Methodist Church. And as we went to break, I said I was going to ask what it is you're posting. What posts do you find to be the most effective? Later, I'll ask about pitfalls. But what do you post?
Sure. Can break posts down into a couple different areas. There are posts that inform, and there are posts that engage in terms of being an invitation for conversation. And I found that it's really important to try to balance out what we're posting. So in church world, it can be really easy to just concentrate on posts that inform. We want to use our Facebook page for broadcasting all the things that are happening at the church. And that can fill up our whole content calendar. We can do that day after day, but that's not the kind of post that Facebook wants, number one. But it's also not the kind of post that gets our people actually being social there on social media and building relationship with one another. So I find it's helpful to build a balance between asking questions that invite response and doing the necessary things of inform. And I really try to do it on almost a 2-to-1 basis, that we're going to have two posts that get people thinking about a topic that they might want to share and gets them responding and conversing with one another. That's a real win when we can have one user talking to another user. And then I'll balance that on the third post or day with something that informs. So, hey, just want to remind you that Sunday morning worship is coming up at 11 a.m. You can join us online or in person.
That's interesting. And so what are the things that get people talking? Is it I don't know, what some examples, what would they be?
Sure. Sometimes you can hit kind of light, like, hey, what are you celebrating this week? That's always a great one.
Okay.
I try to invite people to participate through a sense of surprise in some cases. So what are you celebrating this week can be a bit of a familiar yet surprising question, because it's not something that they get asked all that often.
Yeah.
And something that feels like the entry level is fairly low. We can all respond with something that we're celebrating. And we can ask for things like, hey, what is a Bible verse that stood out for you this week? What is your favorite way to pray? Do you have a place that you go to pray? Or another great way is if you are a minister, a preacher, a Bible study leader, to talk about the topic that's coming up in your next gathering event, and then invite people to respond to that topic. So, hey, we're going to be talking about grace this weekend. What questions do you have about grace?
Oh, yeah. So you kind of mention the topic and then invite people to talk about it. That's good. And so what are some of the pitfalls? I mean, you see all the time in the news, people get in trouble for things, and you don't want to go down that road. Are there pitfalls, and you got to be a little careful? Yeah,
the pitfalls really come, from my perspective, when we get into argumentative type situations, and that happens online. So I fall back into a mindset of, can I offer grace in this situation or not? So if I've posted up a question and somebody wants to use that as an opportunity to hijack that conversation and take it someplace else, I have to revert back to, well, can I redirect this person in a graceful way? Or is the most graceful thing that I can do in this situation not to engage and to possibly remove the comment or post?
And so you are responding as, I guess, the administrator, whatever. You've made the post, and then you're engaging back. And yeah, somebody comes in and wants to take over and make it a major political discussion.
Yep.
You try and redirect, I guess. Is that right?
Yes.
And you could block them.
You can. Yeah, you can block them. You can hide the post, and if we're talking Facebook, or you can just delete the post.
And we've also heard on this show how, and it's obvious, social media can be a real divisive, difficult place. People say all kinds of things. Have you found that to be the case in your world and what you're doing? Does that world enter what you're doing?
Yeah, I find that the more we communicate what a space is for, so we provide a sense of a hedge around it or a guideline around it, we're able to kind of mitigate some of those conflictual areas. So, for example, if I have, again, I'll go to my church's Facebook group, where we say, hey, we are here for building up one another in terms of, and since we're Christian, we would say in terms of discipleship. This is what we're dedicated to, and how we do that through Glencliff United Methodist Church. Well, we have that boundary around it, and if people want to enter into that conversation, posting what we see to be outside of that boundary, then we can just call people back to the purpose of our being here. And most of the time, that gives us the space to redirect without being too conflictual or even feel like we're shutting somebody down, telling them that their opinion is not important. I think that can affirm their opinion, but also to say, like, this is not the forum where we want to engage in that. We're here to build each other up in discipleship. So we're going to talk about our spiritual practices through the week, and we can redirect then through a question about that.
Every church, denominations has difficult issues. You guys, Methodist Church, going through a possible split. Mm-hmm. Do you deal with that head on? Does that come up? How does that very kind of difficult thing come into play with what you're doing online?
Yeah, just to be transparent about it, to recognize that we're not trying to sweep it under the rug. Obviously, it's out there. Anybody who Googles United Methodist Church is going to see some of the media coverage about possible splits or diversions. So just to recognize that that's what's going on. And here's how we are still building our presence in light of that. And again, that's where we can go back into that area of being clear about why we're a presence in that space and what we're trying to accomplish in that space. So from our particular ministry or church, I think it pays to be very upfront about who you are and what your values are. And then that helps to, again, mitigate some of that conflictual information, because if they don't share those values with you, most likely people are just going to pass you by and not participate.
Do you find some churches are afraid to just get into this world? Like maybe they see the stuff that, people are yelling back and forth on Facebook, and they're just like, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to open that door. Do you see that, and what do you say to a church that might be concerned?
Yeah, see it quite often, and that can be a deterrent. Technology is a deterrent. The simple belief that our people aren't in that space can be a deterrent as well. I think it's important for us to consider, though, the people who are in that space. If we are not bringing our presence into that space, then how are we reaching people? I think one of the beautiful parts of digital ministry is accessibility. And so we have now not just access to people outside of a singular hour or two a week. We have 24/7 access, for better or for worse, to people, but we're able to build relationships in asynchronous time. So I can be present even when I'm not physically on the platform. I can still be communicating with people. But also there are folks with accessibility issues. Some people who can't join us on a Sunday morning because they work or because they're not able to leave their homes at this time. I think it's important for us to entertain the idea of how we are reaching those populations of people and being present with those populations of people, which is a pretty valuable invitation, especially as we think about how we represent grace to people in our community.
It's an age-old message, and you have this almost unlimited audience. Mm-hmm. And the question is, how do you reach that unlimited audience? And the pandemic has advanced things and changed things. And so I ask you, you're in this every day, what do you think things will be like in 5 years, in 10 years? How will online engagement, digital ministry, what do you think will be happening in that time, 5, 10 years down the road?
Yeah, I think one of the current trends underway is a redefinition of what it means to be a church leader, specifically in our case, what it means to be a pastor. And that's changing in that our pastors are now being called to be influencers in a way, where we're not just offering a teaching on a Sunday morning, but we're being called to represent how we live our lives in a digital space that is in fact on display for a lot of people to see. And we can think about that in terms of Instagram. When we talk about influencer, we often go to a platform like that. Well, one of the things that we have to entertain as pastors, if we are not participating in that kind of representation, who are we missing? And are we able to fully be present with our people if we're not? But then if we are on those platforms, how are we utilizing them to represent who we are, what our values are, how we're building relationship with people? So entertaining the idea that a pastor is an influencer is one of the big ways.
Boy, does that rub some people the wrong way?
Absolutely. It's
mean,
very uncomfortable.
That's a little uncomfortable. But I mean, reporters are not influenced. I don't know, but people are interested in. We're supposed to post things about things we do in our lives, which makes me a little uncomfortable. Whatever. But people want to see that, and so I guess a pastor, you're leading a big church. They want to see, I guess, a picture from your vacation, right?
Yeah.
Now, my dad was a pastor, and he tried to protect us kids, from certain things, and I don't know. It is. But I guess it's all innocent enough. I don't know. So pastors then, I've never heard it said that way, but I think that's very interesting. Influencer. People are interested in what they're doing, and I guess you would encourage pastors to get on this space and share some parts of what they're doing.
Yeah, if you think about it in terms of a home, if we're inviting people into our home, they're going to see what's important to us by virtue of what we have on the walls, the pictures of our families that are about. Maybe we have a cross hanging up or coffee table books that show the kinds of things that we're interested in. So we don't need to totally expose ourselves online in every way. We just want to entertain the idea that if this is our personal space, akin to our home, and we're inviting people to come in and look at it, what are we posting up on our walls? What's there that might give people the impression of what's important to us? Where are we going in our lives? What kinds of things are we interested in? So we just need to peel back the curtain enough for people to get a sense of really who we are, where they feel comfortable enough that they will build a relationship with us.
And I see you're on TikTok.
Yeah.
What do you post on TikTok?
That's been a lot of trial and error in terms of, but it's funny because when we first started engaging in TikTok, I got online to see what was working for other people in similar situations, and everybody said the same thing. When I started TikTok, I didn't know what I was doing. And certainly that's where we were as well. So we started in just trying to provide some spiritual practices for people that might interrupt their scroll, so to speak. So as they're thumbing through, like, hey, here's a moment for you just to reflect on something. But actually what we found just recently, what's working the best for us, came through a realization that a lot of people are using TikTok as a search engine now. So they'll go to Google for some things, but they go to TikTok for other things. And so with that idea in mind, we started using the platform to answer frequently asked questions about the United Methodist Church. And that content has really taken off. So
Really? So it's taken off. So people are engaging in that way. People have questions. I can imagine people would want to sit in their house and ask questions, and that's a way to do it. That's a good use of that. All right, I want to get in. I think we only have 2 minutes left. The podcast. You do podcasts. Talk about that really briefly. Sure. And can churches do that? Is that something you would recommend for a church to do? Everyone's doing a podcast, but what about a church?
Yeah, I do recommend that churches get engaged in that, and simply because it's a way for us, again, to be present alongside people. As I think about the ways that I consume podcasts or listen to podcasts, I'm driving in the car, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm walking the dog, I'm exercising. Well, we have a chance now to be present with people in those situations as they're doing those things. So that's a wonderful way of building relationship. And certainly I had that in mind when I started podcasting and do the Compass podcast for United Methodist Communications, which is all about providing opportunities to identify spiritual moments in everyday life. And then I do the Pastoring in the Digital Parish podcast for United Methodist Communications as well, which really is reflective of all the items that we've been talking about here today.
So I think it's great. So I encourage people to go listen to the podcast. You're encouraging pastors to maybe start a podcast. We have so much we could talk about more. Thank you for coming on.
You bet.
Reverend Ryan Dunn, thanks for coming on. Thanks for watching Issues of Faith. Have a great day, everybody.